broken Kanu's way, and Dahui's right out of the centre. It's Kanu, what's he going to do? Oh! Can you believe it?
Hello Arsenal fans, and welcome back to a new episode of Can You Believe It, an Arsenal podcast. And it's a North London Derby victory podcast. And these are going to be the best podcasts because we beat them down the lane. They can't say anything. North London is red, everything. And I'm going to start by apologising firstly because I'm going to be much more of a fan in this podcast and laughing at them at our expense. Ultimately, I am an Arsenal fan. I try and be as analytical as possible when talking about football and trying to be as fair as possible when talking about my team. I won't hesitate to call out anything that I think is wrong with the club or anything that's good with the club. All my opinions are on my own, basically. But I couldn't have this podcast without laughing at Spurs just because of how hilarious they were, the reaction was. I will get into the specifics later, but some of the reaction to this game was hilarious. So we will get into that later, as well as all the other things that we usually do. But let's start like we always do with the team lineup. So Bernd Leno started in goal with Cedric at right back. So that was obviously a big change from Bellerin. I didn't expect Cedric to come in, but I did mention in the last podcast that Cedric could be one of the options to come in. David Luiz and Gabriel continued at centre-back with Tierney at left-back. Partey and Xhaka continued in midfield. And then the front four had a couple of changes. So Saka was still on the right. Odegaard was still at 10. Emile Smith-Rowe came back in on the left. And Alexandre Lacazette started up front. Now, when you saw the team lineup, you were very, very concerned about why Aubameyang wasn't starting, why Aubameyang was on the bench. And then Mikel Arteta revealed in an interview with Sky that Aubameyang was dropped because of disciplinary issues. Now, also, it came out that Aubameyang was in the starting lineup. You'd assume ahead of Lacazette. He was in the starting lineup and then got dropped to the bench after this disciplinary issue. Now, obviously, before the game, we had no idea what the disciplinary issue was. A lot of people were speculating. Freddie Ljungberg, who was one of the pundits on Sky, said that he thought he might have been late, so that could have been a thing. And then it turned out, it was reported by The Athletic and by James Nicholas, or Gunner Blog, if you will, that he was late to the game and he was dropped because of that. Now, it wasn't a first offence. It's happened multiple times. And I sort of understand Arteta's feelings. Now, obviously, as a fan before the game, I was a bit nervous. And when you see that someone was late to a game and then for them to be dropped, I think it was a bit of a difficult one to take. It was a tough pill to swallow. And obviously, if you don't get the results, then all the questions are going to be about that player. But luckily, we did get the results, so it's a non-factor. My initial response was that I thought dropping the player because he was late seems petty, but I've sort of turned around about it because Arteta is massive on culture. He wants to build this team and he wants to run this team fairly but also strictly. And I think you lose your authority if you start letting certain players bend the rules, basically. Now, obviously, people will be screaming at me about Ozil and how Wenger gave him a bit more leeway compared to other players. And you can obviously make an argument, I'm not going to make that argument, that some coaches let other players get away with more because that's how you get the best out of them. which is a decent point, but also I see it from Arteta's side. He's been fined previously for this. He's been fined again for being late. And he was dropped. And hopefully this will be something that Aubameyang reflects on. He's now available for selection on Thursday against Olympiacos. So hopefully this is just a one-game thing and he can come back in on Thursday. Fine. And luckily it wasn't a talking point at the end of the game and throughout this morning because we won the game. So ultimately it didn't matter in the end. The team performed very well on the day without him. So let's talk about the performance. And obviously we started the game really well. We've done this for the last few games now. So we started the Olympiacos game very well. We started the Burnley game very well. We started I think we started the Benfica game very well. These are games that we have been starting well and having chances. And there were a couple of chances that we had in the first 20 minutes. Smith Rowe hit the bar, which it was an incredible shot. I think not many people noticed it, but if you watch it again, Smith Rowe actually starts running off to celebrate before it hits the bar. So it's a bit unfortunate for him. We'll get on to Smith Rowe later because he was absolutely incredible in this game. And then Tierney on the left-hand side produced a cross to Lacazette, who shot really badly wide. It was a better chance than he made it look. And the left-hand side was a key to our performance. Matt Doherty wasn't getting any support from Gareth Bale. Højbjerg had to go across, but he didn't go across all the time. So Arsenal basically had two people attacking Doherty, who's not obviously the best in terms of defending. He's much more of a wing-back, much more of an attacking wing-back. And obviously the way we play our system, Tierney is basically our left winger, and the person who plays left wing in the formation usually tucks inside to let Tierney go on the overlap. I think that's why you never see Nicolas Pepe start on the left, because his left footage is always going to go on the outside and it will block that run from Tierney. That's why only Pepe played left wing with Cedric. So you can understand that, and it's sort of making sense now why he's doing that. But we started well. Spurs didn't have a sniff. And then obviously within 20 minutes as well, Heung-min Son went down with a hamstring injury. And obviously I wish him a speedy recovery. You obviously don't want anyone injured. But it was a big boost for us because he's one of their best players. And when you saw that front four of Moura, Bale, Son, Kane, you did get a bit worried. But for one of them to go off with a hamstring injury and to bring on Eric Lamela, I think a lot of Arsenal fans were happy. Not happy that he got injured, but happy that we didn't have to deal with him. But Eric Lamela came on and he was very spiky, as he always tends to be. And he's not a very good player, I don't think. He's got some really good tricks, but he's a very snide prick. And apologies for the language, but yeah, he is a real handful. Pushed Xhaka, I think he kicked Xhaka actually, just on his leg, and Xhaka reacted. Not full-blown Xhaka, but sensibly. And then I think he got into another challenge with Cedric, and there was a bit of push in there as well. He had a lot of incidents in this game. But he also scored a goal, and it was at the time a classic Arsenal thing where we've dominated the play and then they have one shot. Classic Mourinho team where they have one shot and they score from it. And to be honest, it is a really outrageous goal. I can now say that because Arsenal won the game ultimately, but it is a very outrageous goal. A Rabona finish through Thomas Partey's legs. It curves into the bottom corner. It is a lovely finish. Fair play. Everyone reacted quite over the top, I guess, from the Spurs side. Reguilon especially reacted like it was the best goal ever. it was a very good goal, but I've seen better goals than that. He's very good at it. I mean, his other Rabona goal that he scored in the Europa League is much better than this one, I think. Obviously, the stature of the game is a bit different, but it's fine. He can do these tricks, and that's completely fine, but ultimately Arsenal won, so who cares? But obviously at the time you're a bit disappointed. You go 1-0 down. But the reaction from the team was good. They didn't let their heads drop. They knew how much this game meant to us, the fans, even though none of them were there. Smith Rowe travelling down the left again. He was fantastic. He was gliding along the pitch. You can see why people compare him to Jack Grealish, because he can do Grealish things and he's got that movement of Jack Grealish. He also wears his socks very low like Jack Grealish. So it is very Grealish-like the way he is. But he goes down the left and he puts in a cross for Lacazette, who decides to leave it. Now, I'm not sure why Lacazette leaves it. You sort of want your striker to have a shot from the area he was in. Lacazette leaves it, and then Cedric comes running in and smacks the post. And you're just thinking at this point, it's not going to be our day, is it? Nothing's going our way. All the rub of the green seems to be going Spurs' way, even though we're performing very well. That for us to be 1-0 down was just not deserved, and they're probably going to come back into it. But credit Arsenal, they came in with a goal just before half-time. And again, it was Tierney down the left-hand side, puts in a cross, and he's been doing this recently a lot, putting a cross into the penalty spot rather than smashing it basically like a cutback, a cross goal. He's doing it on the penalty spot, which is quite smart. And Martin Odegaard, who scored his first goal with an absolute belter in the Europa League, scores his first Premier League goal here. He takes a deflection off Alderweireld, but do I care? Not really. It was a really good finish, and he's been really good recently. I think he's been a great player for us. I would sign him permanently. I think I could see that after about 2-3 games that he's just a player that we should keep. And also, it vindicates my thought that I think Smith Rowe and Odegaard can play together, and I think they work together as two creators on the pitch. Obviously, you can't play them every game. There are going to be games where you have to play someone a bit more direct, but ultimately, I would rather Smith Rowe play on the left than Willian. And Willian has good creative numbers, but he's not an attacking midfielder, and he's not as good as Smith Rowe. Smith Rowe will get better. Odegaard will get better. Willian, we know what he is. He's only going to get worse. So I would rather them two play. But it was a really good finish by Odegaard, and he celebrated like he loved it. It was a really good goal. And we got in at half-time 1-1, and I think it was the least we deserved. I think we deserved to be 2-0 up, probably. We come out in the second half. A change made at half-time. Pepe coming on for Saka, so Saka has a hamstring injury. Saka had a quiet game by his standards. He had a few chances where he could have gone on goal. I think there was a really good pass from Thomas Partey, which was a really good line-breaking pass. And Saka, he tries to take it with his left to his right, but he doesn't quite get the touch right. But he was quiet by his standards, and Nicolas Pepe came on. And Pepe was bright throughout. He produced a good performance. He's been pretty good in 2021. He's added a work rate to his dribbling and to his end product. He's been very good for us. But then, within 20 minutes of the second half, Arsenal got a penalty. Now, I've seen a lot of debate about this online. Now, firstly, Pepe plays a lovely ball. It was just right after Dele Alli came on, and you miss the pass from Lloris that goes to Pepe. Pepe produces a stunning pass to Lacazette. Lacazette controls it and mishits it with his left foot, but Davinson Sanchez trying to block it, gets Lacazette, and it's a penalty. It's a stonewall penalty for me. His foot is high, he's late. Yes, Lacazette mishit the shot, but he's still late, he's still very high. So it's a penalty for me. And it was hilarious after the game seeing Michael Dawson and Jamie Redknapp after the game crying about it, saying it wasn't a penalty. And the creme de la creme, the cherry on top, was on Match of the Day and seeing Jermaine Genius cry about it. Jermaine Genius has to be one of the most biased pundits I've ever seen in my entire life. There is no objectivity with him at all. It's always pro Spurs. And I don't really understand that because Spurs fans don't really consider him one of their amazing players. I mean, what did he win? A League Cup with Spurs? I mean, to be fair, Spurs haven't won many trophies at all, so it doesn't really matter. But when you compare it to someone like Ian Wright, if he went on Match of the Day, he probably would have laughed, probably would have been happy, like he is, because he is our Arsenal representative, really. But I think Ian Wright shows more objectivity, and I don't think Genius showed any at all. So it was amazing to see him crying on Match of the Day. It was lovely. But it was a penalty. VAR checked it. They gave a penalty. And Lacazette scored it. And it was a really nice penalty. And Lacazette runs to the camera. He says something. I'm not sure exactly what it was. I'm sure someone will find out what it was. But it was a really good penalty. And we were 2-1 up. And again, we deserved it. And then within 12 minutes, Spurs went down to 10 men. And it was our lovely friend, Eric Lamela. Now, the first challenge he makes to Partey, he sort of gets the ball. So if I was an Arsenal fan seeing a player make a challenge like that, I would be annoyed that he got a yellow card for it. He was a bit reckless with it, but he got the ball. Ultimately, I would be a bit annoyed. So he got a yellow card, and then he basically slaps Tierney in the face for the second one, and it's a second yellow, and I don't think you can have any arguments with that. Apart from the Rabona goal, I thought he was poor. His all-round game was poor. All he was there to do was be spiky, which is fine in a derby, you expect it, but he's like this every game. To see him get sent off was amazing, and I will laugh about it a lot because he deserves it. I mean, screw him. Like, his Rabona goal will never be remembered now. Well, it won't be remembered as well as it should because Spurs lost the game. So ultimately, he gets sent off. Great performance, Lamela. But then the last 15 minutes were incredibly nervy from an Arsenal point of view. So after Lamela got sent off, we brought on Willian for Smith Rowe, and we just lost any sort of control of the game. We were very poor. There was a really good cross from Kane, who just missed Dele Alli's head. It was very close from Ali getting onto it. There was another free kick, which was crossed into Kane. He heads in, but it's ruled out for offside. And trust me, I was so delighted. Just to see Harry Kane look sad, it makes me very happy. I mean, I want that to be played at my funeral. It was just amazing. And then in the 90th minute, we give away a stupid foul, and Kane has a free kick quite wide. So you think it might be a bit difficult. He swings it in, it hits the post, it comes out to Davinson Sanchez, who basically has an open goal because Leno has dived for the shot. And Gabriel produces an incredible block. It was an amazing block. It was going to be a goal, and he produced an incredible block and kept our lead and basically kept our win. It was very nervy for those last 15 minutes, but ultimately we got the 3 points, a North London derby win. Once again, North London is red. It was ultimately a very good performance, even if the last 15 minutes were a worry. But I'm glad Arteta acknowledged this. He said it was the worst that he's seen us play for those last 15 minutes, which ultimately is probably right. Now, I was at the Emirates last season when Arsenal played Everton, and in the last 10 minutes we were very, very lucky to win that game. But ultimately that was the start of Arteta's reign, and obviously you're still getting used to everything. But this was a pretty poor end to the game, but it didn't really sour the result for me. We won in the end. For 75 minutes, we battered them, and they didn't deserve anything from the game. We deserved the win. XG backs that up as well. I think it was like 1.8 to 0.9, so we deserved the win. And I'm very delighted that we won. I do want to speak about some special praise for a couple of players on the day. Firstly, Kieran Tierney at left back. He's just been fantastic. In terms of being on that left-hand side, he's been great since this change of system. Now, he was very good at left centre-back, but I think at left-back, bursting forward, showing his attacking qualities, he's been really, really good. And he was really, really good yesterday. He combined very well with the other person I'm going to mention in Emile Smith-Rowe. He always just has this very good ability to dribble past players very easily, and it was just a joy to watch seeing him take the piss basically out of Matt Doherty on that right flank. It was amazing. I absolutely loved it, and he was great on the day, as well as Emile Smith-Rowe. Now, Smith-Rowe was my man in the match. He was fantastic. Deserved a goal. His effort was so unlucky not to go in. As I mentioned earlier, he started celebrating beforehand, so it meant a lot to him. But he was just so silky smooth. He was fantastic on the day. He created 4 chances on the day. In your debut on the North London derby is absolutely unreal. He's a fantastic player. And to have him and Saka coming through at the same time is just so, so good. And it ultimately tells you that relying on good players and relying on your academy can help you a lot. And he's done fantastic. I mean, he's an Arsenal boy. He's Arsenal through and through. He said he was dreaming about the game before the game. So he's been fantastic, and I'm really delighted for him. The centre-backs didn't give anything to Harry Kane, Son, Bell. They were nothing throughout the game. I mean, Kane had that last 10 minutes. But, you know, ultimately they were fantastic and they done very well. So the credit has to go to them as well. As well as the central midfielders. I thought Partey was very good. He dropped off in the second half, but I think he's just so composed. Some of his passing was fantastic. And Xhaka was very good again as well. Again, some of his passing was really good as well. He looked like a leader on the pitch. And that's ultimately what you want from your midfielders, to control that game. And they did. I think Højbjerg was outclassed by both of them. So I think they've done very well on the day. Ultimately, it was a really good top performance from everyone. What it means going forward, well, Arsenal 10th still. I mean, are we just ever going to be above 10th? We are 5 points off 6th. So there is still a chance. We only have 2 big games in inverted commas, or the big 6 left of this season. We have Liverpool, I think not next week, the week after. And we also have Chelsea away, which will be a big game. But we still have to play Everton, West Ham, Chelsea and Liverpool. These are the teams above us. But the rest of the games are all below us now. I think we've still got to play Brighton, Newcastle, Fulham, West Brom and Sheffield United. And that's the bottom 5. So there are a lot of favourable games for us. Who knows? As long as it's not mathematically impossible, we have a chance. And that's what they have to keep believing. I know the Europa League is probably our best shot at Champions League football. I'm completely fine with that. But in terms of Europe, the league is obviously still quite important. If we could finish 6th or 7th from where we were at the start of the season, ultimately it would have been a good end of the season. But obviously there's still a lot of teams to jump over. Villa still have a game in hand on us. But at least we've created some daylight between us and the bottom half. Basically, it's 4 points now. So we have that in hand for us. So we can at least be looking up rather than looking down. Liverpool play Wolves today, so if they win, they'll be 6th. But Liverpool would have played a game extra, so we're only 2 points behind Liverpool. So if we beat them, we can go above them. So ultimately, there are a lot of big games coming up for us, and ultimately, it leaves us with some hope going forward. But obviously, the Europa League should be the priority because it gets us into the Champions League. It's also a European trophy as well, and I keep harping on about this, but I want to see us win a European trophy. It's very important to me. So hopefully we can do that. Hopefully we can go far. I mean, we have a very good advantage against Olympiacos in the first leg. They have to come to the Emirates on Thursday, and hopefully we can finish the job with a professional performance. They have to score 3 to go through, and if we score 1, it goes to extra time. So ultimately, it's been a very good week for Arsenal, and obviously capped off with one of the better results you will see this season. It's been a strange season. I mean, we've beaten Manchester United away, we've beaten Spurs, we've beaten Chelsea. These are games that don't happen a lot. We beat Leicester away. Like, we don't usually do that. And we've done it this season, but we're still 10th. So there will be a lot of retrospective action by us and what could have been. But ultimately, I'm just happy with 3 points, and ultimately, North London's red. So I know I've mentioned that many, many times, but North London is red, North London is red, North London is red. Right, so to end this podcast, to end this very happy podcast, I will answer your listening questions. Again, I tweet after the game about it at AFC Met. You can on Twitter, you can ask me any questions. So let's ask this first one here from at Arsenal Maz, and they ask, what do you suppose is the plan at centre forward? Think Arteta really prefers a Lacazette/Tony profile, so did he beg Orba to stay just for him to play in this sort of left wing cutting in role? Now, I thought it was an intriguing question just because Aubameyang has been playing up front a lot recently. So I think when he signed the contract, I don't think that was the initial reason. I think Arteta wanted to use him on the left wing. I don't think he wanted to use him up front. But he's now used him up front because we have the creative talent behind him to fill in those roles, and he doesn't have to be that player. I think he's looked much better. He's in much better form. He's scored much better goals. He's got a higher XG tally now since he's played up front. And I think it's sort of us using him for once in a correct deployment. So in terms of what is the plan for centre forward, I think Lacazette will go in the summer. He's definitely not going to be offered a new contract. Now, I don't know if any team will pay money for him because I think we will ask too much for him. But ultimately, I don't think we should renew his contract. I think he should go next summer at the very latest, but this summer should be the priority. I think we should try and have Aubameyang and Martinelli competing for that centre-forward role, and maybe Eddie Nketiah as well. And then I would buy Odegaard for a start. Again, have to mention that. But also buy another goal scorer who can play wide. That's what I would do. Now, obviously, it wouldn't be my priority. I still think a central midfielder to partner Thomas Partey, a right back and a backup left back should be a bigger priority. But getting more goals in this team should also be a priority as well. We haven't scored enough, and ultimately, if you want to get top 4 in the long run, you have to score more goals, and Arsenal just don't score enough at the moment. So hopefully we can get a good goal scorer next season in, even if the player plays out wide or plays up front. But thanks for your question. I've got another question from the regular contributor at the Flying Gooner. And he asks, why are Tottenham so upset about the penalty/red card? Throughout the 95 minutes, they looked dangerous for only 10 minutes, and that was on our terms, not theirs. Is their fan base really that fit to think they were good enough? I mean, the analysis, I think, was a bit over the top in terms of the penalty. It deflected on how poor Spurs were. I think it's We Are Tottenham TV. They done a live stream during the game and they were very fair with their analysis, and I think that was completely fine that we deserved to win the game. We dominated the game. They were too negative. They didn't do enough to win the game, to even challenge for the game, apart from those last 10 minutes. But that was mainly from our own doing. I don't think we were good enough in those last 10 minutes. I don't understand why they are complaining about the penalty and the red card. Genius, I saw, was complaining about the red card, but ultimately that hand to the face is probably a red card on its own. So I don't know why he's complaining about the first one not being a yellow. Even though I do sympathise with him in terms of I don't think that first one's a yellow. If Partey or Xhaka got a yellow for that, I would be a bit annoyed. But ultimately, again, I'm going back to this fact. We won, and we deserve to win. So they can complain and cry about all those decisions as much as they want. It just makes me even more happier. So ultimately, that's how I'm feeling. And the last question is from @BillyJohnson101. And he asks, has Arteta matured as a head coach? Can't imagine him a year ago dropping Aubameyang or taking off Saka at halftime. Feel like he's really in charge at the moment, if you get what I mean. Yeah, I totally understand what you mean. You're basically saying that he knows what he wants to do much more now than what he did 12 months ago. And I agree with that ultimately. I think a lot of players need time to get used to a coach, but also a coach needs time to get their methods across. Now, ultimately, I think it's still difficult to imagine if Arteta is an incredible coach. He's got some really big victories and he's coached very well in some of those victories. I mean, the Man City FA Cup game is something I think of. The FA Cup final and the win against Chelsea this season were very good coaching displays, and this one as well. But ultimately, the first half of the season cannot be forgotten, and I think he was very poor at the start and it nearly cost him his job. But I think he is really getting used to this team. He's very clear on his methods now, clear on what he wants. There's now a system, there's now players that play in that system very well. Ultimately, in 2021, we've been one of the better sides in the division. I think we're fourth in terms of games played in 2021, which is incredible when you think about it. And ultimately, most of the performances have been fantastic. I think there's only been 2 performances that have been poor, and that was the Manchester City home game, which we were poor in, and the Man United home game, which we were also poor in, but we sort of could have won that game, and they could have won it as well. And if a goal would have changed the game. So ultimately, he's starting to get used to the job more. And again, I think this is often forgotten. He's a novice coach. This is his first job. He's going to make mistakes. I think one of the management mistakes he made earlier in the season was the treatment of Pepe after he got sent off against Leeds. I think the way he reacted after the full-time whistle in post-match interviews was poor. But then Xhaka got sent off a couple of weeks later against Burnley and he was much more measured. So that just tells me he's improving and learned from his mistake. I also think the treatment of William Saliba was pretty poor. Ultimately, he should have gone out on loan. But that's not just an Arteta decision, that's on Edu as well. So there are things that worry me about Arteta, but ultimately, since 2021, since Christmas Day, he's been a good coach. He's coached a good team. We now look a competent team. We now look like a top 6 team. And if that form can end between now and the end of the season and go on beyond until next season, then maybe we can do better next season. But ultimately, this season will be, unless we win the Europa League, will be a massive missed opportunity, because when you look at some of the teams that have been really bad this season, there was a chance for us and we just haven't produced anything that is near good enough to be higher up in the table until after December. So ultimately, it is a missed opportunity, but he is getting mature. I think he now knows, he's got clarity. He now knows what he wants to do. I mean, the Saka change was enforced, but the Aubameyang thing, that takes some balls, that really does. And he knows that if we lost that game yesterday, all the media talk would have been about Aubameyang. But he trusted those other players and they produced for him. So ultimately, that's him vindicated for the decision. And now we can move on from it. And he's done fantastic in terms of that. I know some people don't like how much of a control freak he is. I mean, there was that video about him asking that man in an interview to close the door and he didn't look happy at all. Ultimately, I thought he was quite polite in it. He did say, please, can you please close the door, even though he looked like he wanted to kill him. But ultimately, I think he's matured as a coach and I'm happy with him so far. I'm happy to give him next season. But we have to see clear progress next season and it will be a big thing for him. So ultimately, yes, he's matured, but there's still a long way to go. But thanks for your question. And that's the end of the podcast. And well, just some brief Olympiacos preview here. So obviously, Saka's injured. He's got a hamstring injury, apparently. We don't know how long he's out for. Hopefully, he's not out for too long. But even if he can play this Thursday, I wouldn't play him. Ultimately, you've got Nicola Pepe, who can play on the right wing, who looks good in 2021. Play him. It will just be a simple change, really. You'd expect Aubameyang to come back in on Thursday as well. Hopefully, it's just a one-game thing and he can come back in fine. Unless, obviously, he's late again. But yeah, we have a good advantage in that game. I think you can rest some other players. So maybe we see El Neni coming for Xhaka or maybe Mari coming for Gabriel, Holding coming for Luis. We have ultimately a 3-goal advantage. It is Arsenal. We probably will shoot ourselves in the foot somehow, but ultimately we've been fantastic to have a 3-goal lead in the next round, in the next leg. So hopefully we can get the job done on Thursday. But thank you for joining me. Once again, I'm sorry to keep putting this point across, but North London is red. London is red in general, to be honest. I'm a very happy person at the moment, a very happy Arsenal fan, and hopefully this really good momentum can keep up this Thursday when we face Olympiacos. But until then, come on you Gunners.
Well, it's broken Kanu's way and De Hui's right out of the centre. It's Kanu, what's he going to do? Oh! Can you believe it?